The chains clinked as I shifted, my wrists raw, breath shallow, heart pounding like war drums in a silent field. The dungeon air had long turned cold. Stone walls holding a chill that bit into bone, but it wasn't the cold that made me tremble. It was him. Talon stepped into the room like the shadows bent for him. His coat swept behind him, dark as raven's wings, his eyes a storm I couldn't read. He crouched in front of me, one knee pressed to the dirt floor, and looked at me like I wasn't shackled, like I was free and he wasn't.
You feel it too, don't you?
His voice was softer this time, rough but softer.
The pull, the scur burning when I'm near. That's not by chance.
I didn't answer, my jaw clenched so tight it ached. He reached up, not to touch, but to hover his hand just inches from my cheek. My skin buzzed like static, like lightning hadn't struck yet, but it was circling.
I'm not here to hurt you, Arya.
You already did, I whisper, my throat raw from silence. You changed me, brought me here without even asking. His hand fell to his knee.
I had no choice.
There is always a choice. He chuckled, quiet, broken.
Not when you're cursed. Not when the thing inside you gnaws at what's left of your soul.
That's when he told me. The words came slow, but they hit hard. He spoke of a curse older than the blood in our veins, of a pact made in desperation by his ancestors, to protect their lands, to steal power from something ancient and wrong. They were promised strength, but power came with a price. They got was a half-life, a shadow in the shape of a man. My breath caught.
I want to be free.
I looked down at the chains, my wrists raw, skin bruised. I don't trust Talon. I never will. But the pain in my scar, the look in his eyes, it's too real. Let me go, I whisper. He studies me like he's deciding if I'm worth the risk. Move, I hissed. His face twisted, not rage, regret.
I'm not your enemy.
He whispered. I screamed. The light exploded. Not from my mouth, from my chest. A burst of raw, trembling energy that knocked Talon straight off his feet and into the wall. He hit hard. I didn't wait. My chains broke, cracking apart like sugar glass. I stumbled through the door, heart pounding so loud it drowned out the world. Barefoot, soaked in blood and magic, I ran. The tunnel was long, narrow, twisting, lit by fire and fear. Behind me I heard shouts. Talon's men, wolves. I didn't look back. My wolf stirred in my chest, clawing, desperate to run, to shift, but I held her down. Not yet. The rain hit my skin like needles when I burst out into the forest. The wind flapped my face, tangled my hair. Branches tore at my legs. My lungs burned with every breath, but I didn't stop. My mind was full of Kale. His voice, his scent, the way his hands cupped my face that night in the fortress, under the stars. His lips against my shoulder, gentle, real. I ran like he was at the end of the world. I don't know how long I ran. My feet bled, my body shook. But the second I saw the ridge that marked the edge of Kale's territory, I collapsed. Face first into the earth. Soaked and shivering, my fingers dug into the mud. I opened my mouth. Kale, I whispered. Then everything went black. I woke up to the scent of pine needles and sage. For a second I thought I was back in the dungeon. That damp chill still clung to my skin, my bones. But then something warm brushed my cheek. Fingers. Calloused, careful fingers. I blinked against the soft lamplight flickering across the wooden beams above me. Kale sat beside me, his eyes bloodshot, his jaw tight. He looked like hell. Worse than hell. His hands trembled as he tucked the blanket closer around me.
I'm sorry, Starlight.
He whispered, voice low and cracked.
I should have been there.
His thumb skimmed my temple, and I leaned into it before I could stop myself. My throat was raw, my wrists burned, but his touch, that grounded me. You didn't know, I rasped, barely able to speak. His gaze met mine, and something broke in him right there. One single tear slipped free. Kale, the alpha, the man who never cried. I reached up, my fingers brushing the edge of his shirt, clutching it like it could keep me from spiraling again. Nora rushed in before he could say anything else. She hovered at the foot of the bed, arms crossed tight, trying not to cry. Her apron was smudged with flour and her hair was a wild mess of curls.
You scared the hell out of us.
She whispered, eyes flicking over my bruises. Good to see you too, I managed with a weak smile. I look worse than I feel. Elder Marcus stood near the doorway, arms folded over his long coat. His eyes scanned me with something between concern and calculation. I knew that look. He'd sensed it. The mark, the shift in my power, maybe even the curse. I sat up slowly, my spine screaming in protest, but I needed to speak before the moment slipped away. Talon didn't just take me, I said. He's cursed, bound by something ancient, something dark, and he thinks I can free him. Kale stiffened. I felt the tension in his body instantly, the way his hands clenched at his knees.
Why you?
Marcus asked. I didn't answer right away. I reached for Kyle's hand instead, needing the steadiness of it. He didn't pull away. Because of the mark, I said, the one on my hip. Everyone always said it was a gift from the moon goddess, but it's more than that. It's tied to prophecies, not just one, but two. Bloodline curse. My family. The reason they died wasn't because of Kyle's raid. I looked at Kyle then, and he flinched like I'd slapped him. It was the witch. She waited years for my family to be dead. Nora gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. She can use my power when my bloodline ends. That's why she wanted them dead. Kale's mouth parted, his expression unreadable. He stood then, pacing once-twice, his shoulders heaving. Marcus cleared his throat.
This isn't just about grief. This is prophecy and curses. The mark is no longer dormant. She's awakened it. That power will draw more than witches, other packs, other wolves. You need to make her one of your own.
Kale turned toward him, jaw tightening.
What are you saying? She needs a family.
Marcus said, turning to me.
Marry her.
The silence that followed felt like thunder had been stuffed into cotton. Nora looked between us, like she was watching something sacred crack wide open. Kale didn't blink.
And if you don't,
Marcus continued,
she stays vulnerable. And if she shifts without guidance, it could destroy her. She could die. The power will spiral.
Kale looked at me, and something softened in his eyes, something deep and quiet and aching. He turned to the door, about to leave, when he paused.
I'm bringing someone in. An old Luna from the Northern Ridge. She can train you, help you control this.
I nodded, chest tight. Okay. And just like that, it felt like something began to shift again. Something that wasn't just pain or fear or anger. It was the slow ache of hope, soft and trembling. When the door closed behind him, Nora crept closer, her eyes glossy.
Aria, I am sorry.
I didn't answer. The great hall smelled like pine smoke and rain-soaked stone. Candles flickered along the iron sconces, casting gold against the shadows. But it still felt cold, like the storm outside had somehow seeped into the bones of the fortress. I stood at the edge of the room, heart thudding beneath the thick borrowed sweater Kale had tossed around my shoulders earlier. Wolves stared, some with wonder, some with fear, some like they wished I'd stayed gone. My mark burned faintly, hidden beneath denim and cotton. It had stayed quiet since I escaped Talon's dungeon. But something about tonight, the eyes, the silence, the weight of it all, made it prickle, like it knew we were being judged. Elder Marcus's voice echoed across the room, calm but sharp.
The girl is marked by prophecy. She is one of us. She needs protection.
She carries the blood of power,
Someone muttered.
and power corrupts.
I swallowed hard, fingers twitching at my sides. Nora stood near the doors, arms crossed tight over her chest, her mouth pressed into a thin line. She hadn't said a word since we entered. Cale stepped forward. His presence hit like thunder, shoulders broad under his dark Henley, boots heavy against the stone floor, jaw clenched tight. But his eyes, when they met mine, they were soft, open, fierce.
If anyone questions her place,
He said, voice low but cutting.
you question me.
Another murmur swept through the hall.
Arya isn't just marked.
He went on, walking toward me slowly.
She's endured more than most warriors here could survive. She's bled for this pack, and she is mine. And we are marrying tomorrow.
My breath caught. Not because of the words, but the way he said them. Like I wasn't a weapon or a curse or something to be feared. Like I was home. Then he did something no one expected. He held out his hand. The same way he did the night of the lunar festival, when everything still felt like it might be okay. I hesitated, just for a second, then slipped my fingers into his. His hand was warm, solid, and when he pulled me close, the pack didn't matter. The eyes didn't matter. Not even the prophecy felt real in that moment. The music started, soft, stringed probably from one of the old recordings Mom liked to play when no one was paying attention. Cale's hand slid to my back, resting gently between my shoulder blades. My other hand found his chest. His heartbeat was steady. Mine wasn't. We danced, slow and quiet. Not for celebration, but for defiance. The wind was restless that night. It wasn't the kind of wind that danced playfully through trees or carried whispers of old memories. No, this one howled like it had teeth, like it was warning us. The kind of wind that slammed shutters, rattled nerves, and made every candle flicker just a little too violently. And yet, I stood there, in the center of the great hall, in front of KL, in a dress stitched from moonlight and rebellion. Heart pounding against my ribs like it was trying to remember how to be brave. My fingers trembled in his, and he noticed. His thumb brushed over the back of my hand like a promise he couldn't say out loud.
You're safe.
He whispered. I nodded, even though safe didn't feel like a thing I'd ever know again. The wedding had been rushed, not in a panicked way, but in the way storms rush through a sky just before thunder cracks. Marcus said it was the only way to keep the prophecy from spiraling out of control. Binding me to Cale would make me harder to claim, harder to destroy. But even as the words were spoken and the sacred circle drawn in salt and ash around our feet, I saw the way half the pack looked at me. Some bowed their heads in respect. Others barely hid their scowls. One wolf didn't even pretend. He just walked out. Cale stood tall beside me, unwavering. Not once did he loosen his grip on my hand.
Mine.
He said when the vows were over, not as a command, not even as a declaration, just truth. That night when the hall had emptied and the last celebratory howl faded into silence, I stood in front of our room, Cale's room, now ours, and let myself breathe again. But the sound that stayed with me was Cale's voice.
Starlight.
I turned slowly. There he was, leaning in the doorway of our room, shirt undone, hanging loose from his shoulders, the tie from the ceremony still knotted around his forearm. His chest rose and fell in slow, steady waves, but his eyes were wildfire. lit, waiting.
It's our wedding night.
He said quietly, like the words tasted strange in his mouth.
I know I shouldn't. Everything's messy, complicated.
I stepped into the light. My ceremonial gown shimmered silver and gold, sleeveless, soft against my skin. I slid my fingers into the back of his neck, feeling the warm brush of his pulse beneath my thumbs. It's okay, I whispered, my voice thick, low, full of something hot and hungry. It's us. He didn't move, didn't breathe. So I kissed him. I leaned up and pressed my mouth to his, urgent and unafraid, like I'd been waiting for this kiss since the moment we collided in that forest, under blood-red skies. My tongue slid into his mouth, searching, tasting. He groaned into the kiss, low and rough, hands grabbing at my hips like he'd been starving. And maybe we had been. For each other. For this. I tore open the front of his shirt, pushed it down his arms, and kissed every inch of his chest like I could memorize him with my mouth. His skin was warm, salty from sweat, hard beneath my lips. His breath hitched as I dragged my hands across his stomach.
Arya,
He whispered, his voice ragged.
you don't have to.
I didn't let him finish. You're mine, I said, and I'm yours. His hands flew to my waist, tugging the gown loose. The fabric tore, just a whisper of sound, but I felt the rush of cool air lick across my skin. His eyes locked to mine like he was checking, making sure, always giving me the space to stop, even when his hands were shaking. But I didn't stop. I wanted him too much. Kale picked me up like I weighed nothing, cradled me against him, then laid me down gently on the edge of the bed. He didn't pounce. He didn't rush, just hovered, watching me like I was a secret only he knew how to read. Then he kissed my throat. Soft, open-mouthed, wet. Kale? I breathed, threading my fingers through his hair. I want this. He sat up slowly and pulled me with him. Then he sat at the edge of the bed and gently, reverently, lifted me to straddle him. My knees bracketed his thighs, his arms curled around my waist, skin to skin. He buried his face in my neck and groaned, deep and guttural.
I don't think I can be gentle.
He muttered against my throat.
Not tonight.
Then don't be, I whispered, lowering myself. We kissed like we were trying to erase every scar, every past, every name that came before this moment. His hands gripped my hips as I pressed against him, slow at first, rhythmic, aching, desperate. Our bodies moved like a dance we didn't have to choreograph. Like we were made for this. For each other. We didn't speak much. Just gasps, whispers, fingertips digging into skin, soft, hungry noises muffled against skin, the kind of love that didn't need translation. He moved slowly, like he didn't want to rush a single moment. I felt every inch of him, filling me with a warmth that stole the breath from my lungs. We moved together, a steady rhythm, clinging to each other like the world outside might break in and ruin it all. And maybe it would. But not tonight. Not while the storm rolled low across the sky and the moon bathed our bodies in silver. Not while his name fell from my lips like prayer, and mine shattered in his mouth like confession. We kept going, slow, then fast, then slow again, lost in that rhythm. By the time midnight came, we were tangled in sweat and limbs, legs overlapping, his hand tracing soft circles over the mark on my hip. I thought I was safe. But then a sharp ripple shot through me, starting at the mark and slicing deep into my ribs. I gasped. Kale sat up instantly, cupping my face, brushing sweat-damp hair from my cheeks.
What is it, Arya? What just happened?
My fingers gripped his forearm, trembling. Something's wrong, My eyes darted to the window. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the glass, curling like smoke but moving with intent. She's here. The candles blew out in unison. We shifted at the same time. My bones ached, cracked, reformed. But it was easier now, less violent, like my wolf had been waiting to come out and fight. Outside, the courtyard was crawling with things that weren't natural, shadows made of teeth and claws, crawling over stone like ink spilled on water. They didn't howl, they hissed like they knew our names. Kale was a blur of strength beside me, his wolf massive, silver-touched, eyes glowing gold. I followed him into the fray, our bodies colliding with darkness. My light, new and raw, pulsed out of me like instinct. The shadows burned when I touched them. But there were too many. Nora screamed. I turned just in time to see one of the creatures strike her down. She wasn't shifted. She'd been heading back from the kitchen, wrapped in a threadbare shawl and half asleep. She collapsed in the dirt, blood blooming like a rose beneath her. No. I threw myself forward, slicing through 3 shadows with a burst of energy I didn't know I had. Kale was already beside Nora, bringing down the last creature with a fierce growl, his teeth sinking in just enough to end it. When it was over, the yard was a graveyard of smoke and memory. Nora lay limp, barely breathing. Kale shifted back, pressing his shirt to her wound, hands slick with blood.
We need to heal her. No.
I dropped beside her, shaking. My hands hovered over her, useless. This is my fault. I will tend to her wounds. She's hurt because of me. Kale's eyes locked with mine.
No. She's hurt because the witch sent those things.
2 soldiers reached her first, lifting her gently, one at her back, the other under her knees. Her head lolled to the side, blood trickling from her temple down into her hairline. Her eyes fluttered but didn't open. Inside the dim cabin, lit by a single oil lantern, the soldiers laid her on the narrow cot. The wooden walls creaked around us as wind howled through the forest. The whole world felt off balance. I knelt beside her, my knees pressing into the worn wood floor. Her skin was pale, her pulse faint beneath my fingers. "Nora, come on," I whispered, brushing her damp hair back. "Stay with me." Kale crouched beside me, one hand on her shoulder, the other gripping mine. Her wound was deep, ripped across her ribs like a claw had tried to tear her in 2. I peeled her shirt back carefully, wincing when I saw how raw the skin was. Blood welled up in waves. I closed my eyes, but my fingers shook as I placed both palms flat over the wound. I wasn't a healer, but whatever gift ran through me, it pulsed now, that quiet, glowing thread inside me I'd barely touched before. It wasn't fire or lightning. It was something older, something gentler. Light bloomed under my skin, soft and golden, flickering like candlelight through my fingers. Nora gasped. Kale's hand gripped my hip, not hard, just firm, present.
That's working.
The wound began to close, the skin knitting itself back, the bleeding slowing. I felt it, like threads pulling tight, stitching her back together from the inside out. And then, just like that, it stopped. The light vanished, my shoulders slumped, my head spun. I fell forward, but Kale caught me, arms wrapping around my waist and pulling me into him.
We did it.
He murmured against my temple.
She's gonna live.
I nodded. I didn't trust my voice yet. My hands were still glowing faintly, like they hadn't quite let go of the power. Or maybe it hadn't let go of me. Nora stirred on the bench, coughing once, then again. I pulled away from Kale and grabbed a cloth to wipe her brow. "Hey," I whispered, brushing damp hair from her forehead. "You're okay now. You're safe." Her eyes fluttered open, foggy at first. then wide with something sharp and raw, not fear, guilt,
I didn't mean for it to go this far.
she said, voice hoarse.
Arya, there's something I need to tell you.
Kale stood, giving us space but not leaving. His presence lingered like heat against my back. I sat on the edge of the bench. What is it?
It's part of it,
She rasped.
the coup. Not the attack on your family. That was never mine, but months ago, I was scared. I didn't trust Kale to protect us from the southern packs. I helped weaken the border watch I let them in.
My breath hitched. My hands curled into fists on my lap. She went on, voice cracking.
I thought I was protecting the pack, but I gave them access to everything.
For a beat, I couldn't speak. The air was thick, the only sound the fire popping low in the hearth and the rain softening outside. Then I reached for her hand. I should hate you, I said, and I meant it. Part of me wants to. I know, she whispered. You stepped in front of those creatures to save us, to save the pack. You took that hit. That's not nothing. She broke. Tears slipped from the corners of her eyes, carving clean paths down her dirt-streaked cheeks.
I'm sorry.
She whispered again. Kale walked over, his face unreadable. Then he did something that made my throat tighten. He knelt beside me and wrapped an arm around my shoulder. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Nora looked at both of us like she didn't deserve this, like she was waiting to be exiled or worse. I squeezed her hand. You don't get to disappear now. You'll fight with us. For what's left. For what's still worth saving. Kale's voice was quiet, but firm.
And that includes you.
The three of us sat there in silence. Not the cold kind, the kind that breathes, that heals, that says, I'm still here. You're not alone. The storm outside had passed, but the war inside, that was still coming. The rain hit the stone like 1,000 tiny fists. My reflection wavered in the glass. Wild hair, eyes rimmed in doubt, a faint burn pulsing on my hip beneath the fabric of Kale's shirt. I couldn't look away. I barely recognized myself anymore, and maybe that was the point. Behind me, Kale paced like a restless storm cloud, shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows, dark hair still damp from training, boots tracking in mud from the outer grounds.
I want to do this right,
He said, voice low but firm.
not just as your mate, Arya, as your equal. The pack needs to see that. They need to feel it.
My fingers curled around the edge of the windowsill. And what if showing them means showing her too? I turned toward him. What if that witch sees our strength and takes it as an invitation? His jaw flexed.
She already knows you're strong. We don't win by hiding. We win by standing together. By showing them you're not just my Luna. You're their leader.
I stepped forward, heart racing like a wild drum. You're not listening. If she sees me as a threat, she'll come after the pack. She'll go through every last one of them to get to me.
Then let her try.
His words cracked through the air like thunder, and for a second, silence swallowed the room whole. You don't get it, I said, voice trembling, eyes burning. You weren't chained in a cell while your power burned inside you like wildfire. You don't know her. She is capable of twisting everything. I'm not ready. Kale's eyes softened, but his voice stayed firm.
You're scared, and that's fair. But you're not alone. Not anymore.
I looked at him, the tension in his shoulders, the storm in his eyes. He wasn't just asking me to step up. He was offering me half his crown. And I was terrified of what I'd do with it. I don't want to lose you, I whispered. He stepped close, brushing his knuckles along my jaw.
Then don't run. Not from this. Not from me.
The next day, the fortress was bathed in gold. Candles lined the marble corridor, flames dancing like nervous hearts. The air was thick with the scent of cedarwood and ash, our pack's ancient blend, used in rituals for unity and truth. I wore a long midnight moon gown with a silver sash tied just above my waist. The scar beneath it pulsed like it remembered. Kyle stood at the front of the great hall in full alpha regalia, a dark leather tunic, embroidered with silver thread along the collar, symbols of our ancestors shining under the torchlight. When his eyes found mine, the corner of his mouth twitched. Not a smile, not quite, just steady, unshaken. He held out his hand. I took it. We stood before the pack, half of them leaning forward, hope glimmering in their eyes, the other half cold and unreadable. Whispers echoed like wind through the trees. Heo's voice cut through them all.
This pack was built on strength, but it will survive on something stronger, loyalty and trust. Today, I share not just my title but my duty. With Arya,
He turned to me, still holding my hand.
she's not just my Luna, she's my partner, and the leader who will walk beside me, not behind me.
Gasps rippled like distant thunder.
She was our prisoner.
Someone growled. I didn't flinch. Kale guided me to the twin thrones, carved from blackened oak. We sat, hands still clasped between us. My fingers shook, but he didn't let go. And then, a whisper, right behind me. Elder Marcus leaned in, voice gravelly and tight with something deeper than just fear.
We can find the witch's origin.
He murmured.
We have to go to the Appalachian Mountains, North Carolina.
My vision tunneled. The Appalachian Mountains. My mother used to speak of them when I was little, quietly, like they were holy or cursed. My knees buckled, and I would have fallen had Kale not caught me, fingers wrapping around my waist like a promise. His other hand found mine under the cloak of our joined robes.
Easy, Starlight.
He murmured, eyes scanning my face. And in that moment, even with the weight of the crown, the bloodline, and a witch's curse at my heels, I believed him. But in the corner of the hall, the shadows danced longer than they should have. Something was watching. And it knew where we were going next. The Appalachian Mountains weren't quiet like I thought they'd be. The wind sighed low between the trees, rustling branches like whispered warnings. Damp moss clung to the rocks. Pine needles crunched under our boots, and the fog wrapped around us like a shroud that didn't want us there. Kale walked beside me, close but not touching. His fingers twitched every now and then like he wanted to. Maybe I did too. But there wasn't time to get soft. Not out here. Not when every step took us closer to the origin of everything that had ripped our lives apart. Marcus led, stoic as ever, his cloak soaked at the edges from the hike. Nora followed, limping slightly from her wound, but her gaze stayed sharp, like she wanted a rematch with whatever shadows dared try again. We were a small group, the ones who stayed loyal after everything, the ones who didn't flinch when I bled light from my palms or when Kale called me Luna in front of the whole pack. That made them family, even if my blood didn't say so. We reached the cabin just as the sun dipped behind the ridge. It was hidden beneath a rock overhang and blanketed in vines weathered, wooden and leaning just slightly to the left, like it was tired from holding secrets too long. Marcus pushed open the door with the back of his hand. The scent hit me first, cedarwood, old paper, and something faintly metallic, like dried blood and age. Inside, the shadows stretched long. A fireplace crackled low in the corner, and in the middle of the room, propped up on a stack of threadbare pillows, lay a man. His skin was paper thin, his cheeks were hollow, his eyes were dull, but not empty. They flicked up to me, sharp and knowing, like he'd seen the ending before I'd even begun.
I knew you'd come.
He rasped. Marcus stepped forward.
Luther,
They clasped arms, slow, like it hurt. Maybe it did,
This is Arya.
Marcus said.
She's the one.
Luther's head turned toward me, his eyes, gray, milky, sad, locked with mine.
The moon's marked you, I can feel it, same as her once, before she lost the light.
I stepped in, slow. The wooden floor groaned beneath my boots. She? I asked. Luther wheezed a breath, like the name itself could kill him.
The witch, she was the first chosen before she twisted.
The air in the room shifted. Even Kaol tensed beside me.
She was loved by the goddess just like you.
Luther said.
But power, it's a sickness. She started guiding alphas, then controlling them. The moon stripped her favor, cast her out. She tore pieces of magic from the stars and the ancient forest spirits. Power not given, but stolen, and carved herself into legend.
His voice was thin, but it cut deep.
She became something else. Not wolf, not divine, just power and pain.
I stepped closer, the firelight catching the sheen of sweat on Luther's face. And you made a deal with her? He nodded slowly.
Thought I'd protect my pack. I didn't realize the price. Immortality sounds noble until the years weigh heavier than your bones.
Nora muttered under her breath.
You can't even die.
Luther gave her a sad smile.
I've tried.
Silence sat between us. I looked down at my hands, the faint glow beneath my skin, the scar that burned with prophecy. I understood now. She wants my power, I whispered, not just to break her curse, but to erase her failure. If I rise, she falls. Luther nodded. The pieces clicked in my head like puzzle locks snapping into place. Callan. His bloodline. They came from her, I murmured, more to myself than anyone else. Talon's ancestors. They were alphas who made deals. That's why he's cursed. Luther's voice was quiet, almost hesitant.
There's a condition. She can only break her curse if you're the last one left in your bloodline.
I stared at him, the words catching in my throat. That doesn't make sense. He gave a tired, sorrowful smile, like someone who'd carried the weight of those words too long.
That's the prophecy, Arya.
Kaol stepped forward, his hand grazing my lower back. Steady, warm, real. My heart thudded hard against my ribs. We have to stop her, I said.
You will,
Luther whispered.
but not alone.
His hand lifted slightly, trembling. He pointed toward the far corner of the cabin, where a trunk sat half covered in dust.
In there,
He croaked.
moonsteel blades, one of the few things that can cut through her magic.
Kaol moved toward it without hesitation. His strength was silent, but it was there in every motion. He opened the chest. The blades glinted, a soft silver bloom humming faintly like they knew their purpose. The fire popped. I felt the weight of everything. My past, my family's death, the prophecy, Talon, the witch, and Kaol.
You need to practice.
Luther said, his voice firm but not unkind.
Train with this blade, and when the time comes,
He met my eyes, steady and grave.
you'll need to take the power of every alpha who made a deal with her.
I can't do that, I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. How am I supposed to take the power of every alpha? Luther didn't flinch. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the fear curling in my chest.
You will, Arya. The moon goddess chose you for a reason.
Kaol returned to my side, the blade in his hand, and his eyes locked on mine.
We do this together.
I nodded. My breath trembled. Together. But before we left the cabin, before we stepped back into the dark forest and whatever battle waited beyond it, we paused. Just for a moment. Outside, the wind howled through the trees. Rain tapped on the roof like an old song. Inside, the fire burned low, warm. Kale sat beside me on the worn-out couch, moonsteel across his lap. He didn't say a word, just reached out and tucked a damp strand of hair behind my ear. I leaned into his touch. My hand found his on instinct, fingers slipping between his like they belonged there. "Are you scared?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. His thumb brushed over mine.
Terrified.
I nodded. Me too. He turned toward me, his eyes soft but intense, voice low and honest.
But I'd walk into hell with you, Arya. No question.
And in that quiet moment, between battle plans and old curses, between rainstorms and bloodlines, I leaned my forehead against his. Just the press of skin, just breath shared. Nothing more. I could feel the storm coming. And I knew I wasn't facing it alone. They say time heals. But out here, in the cold spine of the Willow Creek, it didn't heal so much as shape you, burned away the softness and left only the parts of you sharp enough to survive. Days passed, nights dragged. Kale stayed close, not hovering, not smothering, just present, like gravity, and just as heavy when I tried to ignore how badly I needed that presence. Every morning before the sun climbed over the peaks, I was on my feet. Mud-caked boots, tight black training leggings, a tank top soaked through with sweat before the rest of the world even opened its eyes. My scar itched with prophecy I didn't fully understand. My muscles ached from drills, but I kept going. I had to. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. Grace, the wise Luna Marcus trusted with my training, was the kind of woman who didn't need to shout to command attention. She was in her 50s maybe, with streaks of silver in her braid and eyes that had seen every kind of loss but still softened when she looked at me.
"You've got power,"
she said, tossing me a wooden staff one morning.
but you don't got rhythm. Power without rhythm destroys people.
She wasn't wrong. I moved like someone trying not to fall apart. Because I was. I trained alongside my warriors, my pack. They didn't trust me at first. I felt it in the way they stared too long or looked away too fast. But day by day, that changed. I bled beside them, bruised command drills, took hits and gave them back harder. And slowly they started calling me Luna. But even with loyalty growing, something clawed at me from the inside. The dreams started 3 nights ago. Always the same at first. Thick fog, silver light pouring through twisted branches, and then she'd appear, not her face, just her back. Pale skin, dark hair like spilled ink, and she'd lower her skirt slowly, silently, revealing a crescent moon mark carved into her hip. Just like mine. Every time I saw it, my scar would burn hot, and I'd wake up drenched in sweat, heart punching my ribs like it was trying to escape. I told Kale after the 3rd night. We sat on the edge of the training field. My legs were tucked under me, arms resting on my knees. Kale sat beside me, one boot planted, elbow resting on it, hand rubbing the back of his neck. He still smelled faintly of cedarwood and sweat. His shirt clung to his chest, soaked through from drills, but his eyes, those were soft, locked on me like I was the only storm he didn't want to run from. "She has the mark," I said quietly, still catching my breath. Kale stilled.
Like yours?
Exactly like mine. But I can't see her face. Every time I try, it blurs like smoke. But I know it's her. I feel it. He didn't speak right away, just reached out and threaded his fingers through mine, slow and deliberate. His thumb grazed the side of my hand. That one soft motion undid me more than any kiss could have.
She's showing it to you on purpose,
He said.
trying to get in your head.
"She's already there," I whispered. That night, the dream shifted. It wasn't the woods. It was the past. My pack's hall, lit with lanterns, laughter echoing. My father's voice, my mother's warm smile. And her, Tessa, walking in from the rain, soaked and shivering, eyes full of fear, voice trembling.
"He's coming,"
She'd said.
"The Alpha I ran from. Please don't send me back."
They let her in, gave her clothes, food, a place to sleep. That same night, Kale's wolves attacked. Only now I saw her in the shadows, Tessa, whispering, pointing, leading them straight to my family, to the elders, to everyone who carried blood that could threaten her. It wasn't Kale. It was her. She'd used him. I jolted awake with a scream caught in my throat. Kale was already there. He didn't ask, just wrapped me up in his arms, held me while I shook. My face pressed into his bare shoulder, his heartbeat thundered against my skin like it was screaming with me. "She's the witch," I said when I could finally breathe. "Tessa, it's her." Kale's body tensed.
You're sure?
I saw it. I saw her mark. Saw her face this time. She wanted my family dead. She played the victim. She's the one who cursed Luther. And Talon. All of it goes back to her. He didn't speak, just held me tighter. And I broke. Not loud, not sobbing. Just a soft, aching crack deep in my chest, where everything I'd lost used to live. I looked up at him, at the man I'd once been told to fear. But his eyes, damn those eyes, were full of fire and regret and something dangerously close to love.
I couldn't protect you back then,
He said, voice rough.
but I will now, no matter what it takes.
His hand cupped my cheek. His thumb brushed beneath my eye. I leaned into the warmth, the safety. The fireplace crackled softly, casting a warm amber glow across the walls of my chamber. Rain tapped against the tall windows like impatient fingers, and the smell of cedar smoke and wet stone filled the room. Familiar, grounding. My oversized sweater clung to my damp skin, the sleeves too long and swallowed by my curled hands in my lap. I sat on the edge of the bed, legs tucked beneath me, trying to breathe slow, steady. But nothing about this was steady. Kale sat beside me, close enough that his thigh brushed mine. He hadn't let go of my hand since Grace told us, not once. His thumb moved in slow, distracted strokes across my knuckles, like his body was trying to soothe mine even while his brain spun out in a dozen directions. Across from us, Luna Grace stood near the hearth, arms folded over her chest, her gaze pinned on the flames. Elder Marcus had pulled a leather chair close, hunched forward, elbows on knees, face unreadable. "So," I said finally, because the silence was getting too loud. "We're really doing this? We're just gonna sit here pretending this isn't the scariest thing that's ever happened?" Marcus let out a slow breath.
It's not the scariest. It's the most important.
Grace turned from the fire. Her eyes, sharp but kind, met mine.
You're carrying something rare, Arya. Not just a child. A shift in bloodlines. A force the witch can't predict, let alone control.
Kale's jaw clenched. I felt it before I even saw the muscle twitch.
That's going to come after it.
Gracie nodded.
She'll try.
Marcus leaned in.
We've long suspected the witch's curse had conditions, loopholes. She could only manipulate power from bloodlines she'd corrupted, bent. But you, Arya, you're something else now. What's growing inside you is untouched by her, pure, which means her grip weakens every day it grows stronger.
My stomach twisted, both from the nausea still lingering and the weight of his words. "And if she can't use me anymore," I said, voice low, "she'll just try to destroy me."
No,
Hale said firmly.
she'll try to destroy us, but she won't succeed.
I looked at him. Really looked. His hair was still damp from the rain, falling messily over his brow. His shirt clung to his chest, sleeves pushed up to his elbows. He looked like a man ready to fight a war and kiss me through one. Grace came to sit at the foot of the bed, her hands folded in her lap.
Arya, your powers, they've already started to change. Today in the courtyard when you touched that stone.
It exploded, I finished for her. I wasn't even trying,
Your pregnancy is enhancing your powers.
Marcus said.
You're becoming a channel, not just a source.
Fantastic, I muttered. So I'm a walking light switch with no control. Kale gave my hand a gentle squeeze.
We'll figure it out together.
Grace smiled faintly.
You'll train with me every day. We'll learn to temper the surges. Think of it like learning to breathe underwater. You don't fight the pressure, you flow with it.
Poetic, I said with a dry laugh, except I feel like I'm drowning. Grace's face softened.
Then we'll hold you up until you remember how to float.
I blinked hard. That hit a little too close to home. The morning came with thunder in its bones. Lightning cracked somewhere out past the tree line, as I blinked into the gray-blue light spilling through the stone windows of our room. Rain slid down the panes in long, streaky lines, tapping soft and steady against the glass like a lullaby meant for someone else. The bed was too cold, too empty. I reached for Kyle's side without opening my eyes, expecting the warmth of his skin, the steady rise and fall of his chest, the way his hand always found mine in the dark. But there was nothing, just tangled sheets and the ghost of his scent, cedar, heat, and something wild I could never quite name. Kyle? I whispered. No answer. I sat up slowly. The room was still. A quiet dread crept into my chest. I pulled on one of his flannels. It hung loose over my frame, smelling like him, and padded barefoot into the hallway. My hair was a mess, still tangled from sleep, and my skin was chilled from the storm air drifting in through the open hall. Kyle? I called louder, heartbeat ticking up. Nothing. I checked the practice grounds first. Muddy and slick from the rain, the arena was empty. The wooden dummies stood still and hollow-eyed, like they were watching me. A few warriors were gathered near the far wall, sipping from metal flasks, boots soaked through. I jogged toward them. Have any of you seen Alpha Kale? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. They exchanged looks, shook their heads.
He didn't come to morning drills.
One said.
We figured he was still with you.
He's not. My voice cracked. He's not anywhere. That's when the panic bloomed, fast and mean, like a wildfire at my heels. By midday, every able-bodied wolf in the territory had been dispatched. We searched the borders, the woods, the old watchposts. I called his name until my throat burned. Nothing. Not a damn trace. And that silence, it wasn't natural. It wasn't just a man going for a walk. It was a warning. Something in my mark ached, that dull, low throb like a heartbeat underwater, not sharp, not urgent, but present, and wrong. I stood in the courtyard, soaked through, hair plastered to my cheeks, watching soldier after soldier return empty-handed. Every one of them looked at me like I was already grieving. I didn't even notice Grace and Marcus until I felt her arms wrap around my shoulders from behind.
Arya, sweetheart.
I turned, shivering, eyes wide, jaw locked to keep from breaking down right there in front of them. He's gone, Grace, I whispered. He wouldn't leave like this. Not without telling me. Marcus's face was drawn and pale, his brows furrowed in thought.
Did he say anything unusual last night?
I swallowed hard. Nothing that would make me think. We will search for him, Grace said gently, brushing wet strands from my forehead.
He'll come back.
I nodded, though inside I was breaking, because deep down I knew it. Kale's disappearance is not just a coincidence. It is something tied to me, to this prophecy, to that witch. I could feel it like static on my skin, sharp, electric, impossible to ignore. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat curled up on the window seat in our room, watching the rain beat against the stone. His shirt was wrapped around me like a second skin. I kept imagining him walking through the woods, soaked, lost, bleeding maybe. Or worse. And I hated myself for not waking sooner, for not hearing the sound of him leaving. I pressed my palm to my mark. It burned softly, still faint, still muffled. But alive. He was alive. And he was coming back to me. He had to. I let my eyes close for a second. Just a second. And in the dark behind my lids, I saw his face, jaw tense, eyes burning, lips parting like he was about to say something. But then thunder cracked again and snapped me back. My eyes flew open. No more waiting. Tomorrow I'd search again. Myself. With claws if I had to. Because if the storm wanted to take Kale from me, it'd have to go through me this time. It had been 2 days. 48 hours without a trace of him. No scent. No echo through the bond. No Kale. The world hadn't stopped spinning, but it sure as hell felt like it had for me. I stood at the tall window of my chambers. Rain painted silver veins down the glass. Beyond it, the forest loomed in shades of deep green and washed-out gray, heavy clouds hanging low like they were grieving with me. I hadn't slept. My hands trembled as I pored over war reports and territory maps, forcing myself to keep functioning. If I stopped moving, I might break. There were still meetings to attend, food to ration, soldiers to debrief. The pack looked to me like I had all the answers. But I didn't. Because the only one who made everything make sense was gone. Kale. Disappeared like smoke on a cold wind. Every lead ended in dead air, his scent cut off near the outer ridge. No claw marks, no signs of struggle. Like he'd been plucked from the world without a sound. And no territory claimed responsibility. Not one alpha had seen him. Not one messenger carried a whisper. Not even a damn rumor. That only meant one thing. Whoever took him knew how to stay hidden. But tonight, something shifted. I sat in our bed, knees drawn to my chest, Kale's scent still clinging to the sheets. The fireplace had gone out. The only light came from the soft golden glow of the moon pouring through the drapes. I placed a hand on my belly. Soft, warm, a little bigger than it'd been a few days ago. "We're gonna find your daddy, little one," I whispered, voice cracking in the dark. "I swear it." The baby didn't kick, but I imagined it hurt me anyway. I lay back, but my body refused to rest. I kept turning side to side, thought to thought, each theory wilder than the next. Enemies from the north? A witch's illusion? Kale choosing to leave? No, not him. Not after everything we'd been through. He wouldn't just leave. That's when the thought hit me. Talon. Of course. Talon had been quiet ever since that last confrontation. Too quiet. The way he'd looked at me, like he already knew something I didn't. His obsession with breaking the curse. His desperation. He must have taken Kale. Because now I was the only thing standing in the way of his freedom, and Kale was in the way of me. I sat up, heart pounding. No more waiting. By the time the sun started to rise, staining the sky in streaks of gold and blood orange, I'd already called a council meeting. The war table was full. The fire crackled behind me as I walked into the room, spine straight, chin lifted. I wore Kale's cloak, black, heavy, with the alpha crest stitched in crimson across the shoulder. I didn't care if it swallowed me. I wanted the pack to see I still carried him with me. Grace and Marcus stood at opposite ends. Nora was already seated, her hands curled tight on the table's edge. Every warrior, scout, and council elder was here. I stepped up onto the dais where our twin alpha throne waited. And I sat. A silence fell. Then I stood. My mate has been gone 2 days, I said, my voice sharp and unshaken. You all know KL. He doesn't just vanish. He doesn't run. He fights. Which means someone took him. And I know who. My hands curled around the edges of the throne. Calland. A ripple moved through the room. Some gasped, some nodded like they'd already suspected. Talon needs me to break his curse. But he knew I wouldn't help him. So he took Kael. And now he waits for me to come crawling. I stepped down from the platform, boots echoing on the stone floor. You're not crawling. I looked each of them in the eyes, one by one. We're going to war. Gasps, whispers. Someone dropped a mug, but no one spoke over me. I've trained you for this, I continued. I didn't ask for this leadership, but I've earned it. I've bled for this pack, and now my mate, our alpha, is missing. So we fight. And we bring him home. That's when Grace's voice cut in.
Aria,
She stood tall, noble, always composed.
I understand your grief, but you're carrying a child. You need rest. Marcus and I will lead the charge.
A murmur of agreement rippled through the pack. Nora rose, raising her fist.
We fight for care, we fight for our future.
The soldiers echoed her cry, fists pounding tables. But I lifted a hand. And silence returned. I hear you, I said, my voice soft but firm. I know you want to protect me. I know the old ways taught you to shield the Luna, to hide the mothers away. But this isn't a story from the past. I placed a hand over my belly. This child is not my weakness. I looked up, eyes locked on Grace, then Marcus. This child is my power. Gasps again, a few eyes wet with tears. I stepped back to the throne, firelight catching in my hair, heart thrumming like a war drum. If I have to fight with one hand and carry my future in the other, so be it. But we fight. Tonight we march toward Talon's lands. We bring our alpha home, and we remind the witch, and everyone like her, what it means to steal from a mother. And for the first time in 2 days, something in my chest lifted. Not peace, not calm, but fire. And fire meant Kale still had a way back to me. The night air smelled like iron and pine. Heavy. Still. Somewhere out there, Kale was either fighting to come home, or... God, I couldn't even finish that thought. Not now. I stood in front of the mirror, fastening the last clasp of my armor. Black leather molded to my body, stitched with silver along the seams. I'd torn off the Luna silks days ago. Tonight, I dressed for war. My reflection looked like someone else. My eyes were darker, sunken from too many sleepless nights. My hair, once soft from Kale's hands brushing through it, was tied back in a braid like a warrior's rope. I hadn't even felt the baby kick tonight. Maybe it knew. Maybe it sensed the storm I carried in my chest. Nora pushed through the door, already strapped in her war gear. She looked fierce. Jaw set, hair twisted into a tight bun, face streaked with black war paint.
You sure about this?
She asked, one brow lifted. I'm done sitting still, I muttered. I can't breathe when he's gone. Nora didn't argue. She just nodded and walked beside me, our boots striking against the stone floor of the fortress as we made our way to the soldiers' hall. When we reached the entry arch, the soldiers were already lined up, dozens of them. Steel glinted under the torchlight. Their gazes lifted as I stepped into view, the moon blade strapped to my back, its hilt gleaming like bone kissed with firelight. I paused for one heartbeat, staring at all of them, at their hope, at their trust in me. Are you ready? I asked. voice sharp and cold.
Yes, Alpha.
They shouted in unison. I mounted the white horse waiting for me outside the gate. She was skittish beneath me, as if even she felt the tension in the air. Nora rode beside me on a black steed, her blade slung across her back. Above us, the full moon hung like an eye, wide and glowing, watching. And we rode. The trees blurred past. The world narrowed into the rhythm of hoofbeats and the rush of wind. No one spoke. The silence was sacred. Just me and the weight of what this night might cost us. When we reached Talon's territory, the land felt too quiet. The buildings were dim, smoke curling from only a few chimneys. Most of the pack slept. Shadows stretched long and still across the courtyard. No guards, no howls. It was almost too easy. I raised my hand, stopping the front line. My horse pawed the dirt beneath her, and I leaned forward in the saddle. Then, loud enough to crack through the night, I called out, "Talon, we're here for our alpha. We attack your pack." And just like that, hell broke loose. Howls split the night like sirens. Wolves rushed from the barracks, armor half-fastened, some barefoot, some shifting mid-charge. The clash of steel and claws echoed across the fields. I leapt from my horse and drew the moonblade. Its edge glowed like moonlight caught in crystal. It hummed in my hand, as if it knew exactly what it was forged for. Blood sprayed, bodies fell, but I never stopped moving, never stopped looking. Kale. Where are you? Talon finally appeared, shirtless under his armor chestplate, his hair a mess, eyes wild with confusion. He blocked a soldier's strike, shoved him back, but his focus was elsewhere. It was on me. Even in the chaos, our eyes locked across the battleground, and then I was in front of him, breath ragged, boots sliding through mud and blood, the moonblade at his throat. His chest heaved. He didn't even raise his sword.
What do you want, Arya?
He asked, voice strained. Where is Kale? I snarled. Where is my mate? His eyes widened. Genuine shock, like the kind you can't fake.
I don't know.
He said, frowning.
What are you talking about?
I shoved the blade closer to his neck. His pulse beat hard against the steel. I could kill him. Right now. Don't lie to me, I growled. You wanted me to break your curse. You took him to make me come to you. He raised both hands slowly.
I swear on my blood, I didn't take Kale. If I had, do you think I'd be this unprepared?
He asked, gesturing at the chaos around us.
I didn't even follow you when you left my territory. You think I risk war with Kale to pull some stupid trick?
I stared at him, blinking past the sweat and disbelief choking me. I wanted to scream, rip him apart, but something in his voice, his eyes, told me he was telling the truth.
If you don't believe me,
He said softly.
search the pack house. Search the whole damn grounds. I won't stop you.
I gritted my teeth, heart racing. The rage in me cracked, letting fear rush in like cold water through a broken dam. I turned to my soldiers and shouted, Search everything. Leave no door unopened. Find him. They scattered, wolves and warriors alike storming through buildings. I followed, room by room. Kale's name on my lips, in my throat, crawling up my chest like a scream I couldn't get out. But he wasn't there. Not in the dungeons. Not in the storage houses. Not in the infirmary. Not anywhere. I ended up back outside, my hands trembling, clothes soaked in sweat and blood. The moon was fading into clouds. Soldiers were quiet now, unsure what to say. No victory, no closure. Just questions hanging in the air like smoke. Talon stepped closer, careful like I might still strike him.
Rea, I don't have him.
He said again.
I never did.
I looked up at him, eyes stinging. Then, where is he? He shook his head.
Who wish I knew.
And that's when something sharp twisted in my chest. What if this was bigger than talent? What if the witch, or something worse, had him? Panic crawled up my spine. I pressed a hand to my belly, half to calm myself, half to shield the child I was suddenly terrified to raise without Kale. Because now I knew something for sure. Kale didn't leave me, but someone took him. And they didn't want a war. They wanted to erase him. And I wasn't about to let that happen. The fire in Talon's chambers crackled, casting long shadows over the stone walls. The scent of smoke, sweat, and something metallic hung in the air. I didn't sit. I couldn't. My legs jittered with leftover adrenaline, and the pit in my stomach burned with dread. Kale was still gone, and now we were trapped in someone else's game. Talon paced in front of the hearth, his hands clasped behind his back, like he was holding in more than just words. He wasn't in armor anymore, just a black shirt clinging to his damp skin and dark pants still streaked with dirt from battle. His jaw was tight. Every so often he glanced at me like he didn't want to say it out loud. And he did.
It's the witch.
He muttered, stopping mid-stride.
She's the one who took Kyle.
My heart thudded once, loud and heavy. The room stilled. Even the flames seemed to hush. What? I asked, not because I didn't hear him, but because I needed to not believe it. Talon's voice dropped.
She wants you, Arya. She always did. Kale was just a means to bring you to her.
I swallowed hard, the air suddenly thick.
She knew you'd come for him.
He continued.
She's waiting. When you confront her, she'll try to take you, to use your bonds, your grief, your rage, everything, to twist you into breaking the curse willingly.
I didn't realize my hands were shaking until Grace reached over and touched my arm. Her fingers were cool, grounding. We attack tonight, I said, my voice hoarse but steady. Marcus, sitting in the corner with his hands folded tight, shook his head.
We don't even know where she is. The witch moves like smoke drifts in and out of places people forget. Old places. Forgotten corners of the world.
We can find her. I snapped, pacing now, my boots echoing against the floor. There has to be a way. Talon stepped closer, eyes sharp.
Even if we do find her, we can't face her as we are. Not without help. She's fed off ancient magic for generations. We're just flickering candles compared to her.
Then what do? I snapped. Wait around for her to come for the rest of us?
No.
Talon said, his voice low and serious.
We gather power. The power of the alphas who once made deals with her. They're cursed now, suffering quietly in their lands. But if we convince them, if they give their strength to you, we might have a chance.
I blinked, trying to absorb the weight of what he was asking. They'll give up everything they have? I asked. Grace chimed in, arms crossed tightly over her chest.
And what if they don't? What if they tell us to go to hell?
Talon didn't flinch.
Then we move on to the next. We try until we find the ones who will. We don't give up before we start.
I leaned back against the wall, rubbing the heel of my hand into my chest. The pressure helped the panic stay down. Barely. How do we find them? I asked quietly. How do we gather all the alphas? Talon looked at me then, and for the first time he didn't look like the enemy. He looked like someone who'd lost as much as I had, maybe more.
I'll go south and east,
he said.
Take my warriors. Those regions still respect my name.
And me? I asked.
You take the west and north,
he said.
You're Kale's mate, they'll listen to you. You carry something they don't hope.
I scoffed. Hope feels like a broken compass right now. He stepped forward, voice soft.
Then borrow mine, just until you get there.
I looked at Nora, who stood behind me like a shadow, arms folded, armor scratched and dented. She didn't speak. She just gave a short, silent nod. Grace touched my shoulder again.
We'll go with you. You won't be alone.
And Marcus. The oldest among us, just said.
It's time.
I let out a shaky breath. The fire popped in the background, casting flickering gold across Talon's face, and in that moment I saw something human in him, something vulnerable. His eyes looked older, like he'd carried this burden too long. We weren't just gathering power. We were gathering ghosts. That night, I sat alone in the room Talon offered me. It wasn't much stone walls, a small bed, a worn blanket that smelled like cedar, and something faintly sweet. I hadn't taken off my armor yet. My sword rested on the floor beside me, and I stared at it like it might answer the question screaming in my head. Where are you, Kale? I pulled my knees up to my chest. My braid was coming undone, strands falling around my face like vines curling in the dark. I pressed a hand to my stomach, still no movement. Maybe the baby knew I needed stillness tonight. I thought about Kale's hands, how they'd always found me in the quiet. How his voice dropped to a murmur when it was just the two of us, wrapped in shadows and secrets. I missed him like breath. There was a knock at the door. Soft, hesitant. Come in, I said, already wiping my face. It was Talon. He didn't step inside, just leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, his hair falling into his eyes.
Couldn't sleep,
he said quietly. Yeah, I said, looking down. Me either. He lingered there for a second too long. Then stepped in, slow and unsure. The air shifted with him, warmer, thicker.
You look like hell,
he said, trying for humor. I feel worse, I muttered. He sat on the edge of the bed, keeping a careful distance.
For what it's worth, I would have died to keep Kale safe. I know you don't believe that, but I would have.
I studied him. The sharp lines of his face, the exhaustion in his shoulders, the guilt clinging to him like smoke. I believe you, I said, voice cracking. But it doesn't make this hurt any less. His hand reached out, barely brushing my wrist, then pulled back.
We're going to get him back,
he whispered.
We'll burn the world if we have to.
I nodded, because I couldn't speak past the lump in my throat. And for one breathless moment, the space between us felt too full of regret, of longing, of things we never said. But this wasn't that kind of night. This night was for grief, for grit, for planning the impossible. I leaned back against the wall, eyes closing, fingers still wrapped around the last place Kale held me. And I whispered, "Hold on, Kale. Just a little longer. I'm coming for you." The air out west tasted different, drier, thinner, with that crisp snap of pine and altitude that made your lungs work a little harder. The Rocky Mountains loomed like quiet, watchful giants, snow still clinging to their peaks even as spring threatened to crawl in. My boots crunched against gravel as I stepped off the dusty trail, the wind tugging at my coat, tangling the ends of my braid. We'd traveled for days. Me, Nora, Grace, Marcus. Now it was just me and Marcus walking up toward the fortress that sat carved into the edge of a cliff, like it had been born from stone instead of built. The old Alpha's place. They called it the last hold because nothing reached this high without purpose. And no one stayed this long without secrets. I was wearing a dark brown leather coat Kale had once given me, one that still smelled faintly like him, cedar and firewood and something wild. I'd been pulling it tighter around my belly more these days. I wasn't showing much, but I could feel the baby, feel us. Every little flutter reminded me what I was fighting for. And every step closer to this door made me question if I had it in me to keep going. Marcus glanced at me from the side. He'd been quiet most of the hike, said it was better to let the mountain speak first.
Don't be surprised if he slams the door.
He muttered, voice low.
He's older than dust and twice as stubborn.
I nodded, lips pressed together. If he slams it, I'll knock again. Marcus cracked a smile.
That's the spirit.
The door groaned open before we even touched it. Standing in the archway was a man draped in fur, beard down to his chest, eyes the color of melting ice. He looked at me like he already knew why I was here. The ex-alpha,
Back off my mountain.
he said flatly.
Elder Gideon.
Marcus stepped forward, trying to soften the blow.
This is.
I know who she is. I'm not blind. I can smell the prophecy from here.
My stomach dropped. I'm not here to bring prophecy, I said. I'm here for help. He tilted his head, skeptical, like I was a naive kid asking a matchstick to stop a wildfire.
You want to take down Tessa?
He said, scratching at his beard.
You think I haven't seen what she's done? I buried half my bloodline because of her, and I still ain't stupid enough to go poking that wolf with a stick.
I took a slow breath. She has my mate,
That ain't new.
he barked.
She takes what don't belong to her. That's what witches do. You come here looking for some noble stand? Sorry, sweetheart, I retired from that a long time ago.
I swallowed hard. My hand dropped to my belly. That soft, round curve grounded me like nothing else. My voice shook, but I held my chin up. I'm not just fighting for Kale, I said. I'm fighting for our child. He looked at my stomach. His mouth pressed into a hard line. Do you have kids? I asked. He didn't answer. I stepped closer, ignoring Marcus' subtle warning glance. I don't care how scared you are. I don't care how many graves you've stood over. You're still breathing. That means you chose to survive. I'm choosing that too. But I can't do it alone. His eyes flicked up to mine. Something flickered there like maybe he saw a piece of the wolf he used to be. But it was gone as quick as it came.
No.
He said. Just that. Then he turned and shut the door in our faces. I didn't say anything as we walked back to camp. I just sat down beside the fire, pulled my knees up, and stared at the flames until my eyes stung. I felt so damn tired. Tired of trying to be brave. Tired of pushing through grief like it wasn't eating me alive. Tired of holding my breath, waiting for anyone to help me bring Kale home. Nora handed me a blanket and sat beside me. Grace was quiet, fidgeting with a piece of twine, braiding and unbraiding it. Marcus paced, always pacing when he didn't know what to say. I touched my stomach. That little bump beneath my fingers gave me the tiniest sliver of warmth. I whispered, "You're not going to grow up without him. I won't let that happen." We headed out at dawn, crossing valleys where the wind sang and the trees whispered like old spirits. Marcus led us down winding mountain trails until we reached the next name on our list. Luther. We'd met once before, but I remembered him clearly tall, scarred, with eyes like smoke and shoulders like boulders. He wasn't just an ex-alpha. He was one of the cursed. One of the first who'd ever made a deal with Tessa, and lived to regret it. He lived near an old orchard tucked inside a sunken glen, surrounded by twisted apple trees that never bore fruit anymore. The moment he saw me, he stepped out of the barn, wiping grease from his hands. Marcus gave him a nod.
We need you.
Luther looked at me, really looked at me. Then he blinked. Hard.
She took Kale.
He asked. I nodded once. He didn't even pause.
I'm in.
That night, after we set up camp beside a river, I found myself sitting near the edge, watching the water ripple over stones. Luther sat nearby, silent, polishing a blade that looked older than time. "Why'd you agree so fast?" I asked. He shrugged.
Because she took someone from me too. Years ago. I didn't get a chance to fight for her.
I looked at him, throat tightening. He nodded at my belly.
You still have something to fight for.
I reached down, resting both hands over my stomach. Yeah, I whispered. I do. He stood and walked back toward the fire. I stayed a little longer, letting the moonlight wash over me. The wind whispered through the trees, brushing strands of hair across my face. I closed my eyes. In the silence, I could almost feel Kale's arms around me again. The way he'd always wrap me up from behind, press his lips to the nape of my neck and say, "You're my home, Arya. I'll always find my way back to you." God, I missed him. But I wouldn't wait anymore. I was done hoping. Now, I was coming. The night air shimmered. I swear, it wasn't just in my head. The field we stood on high up in the Blue Ridge, with stars so close you could almost taste them, was soaked in moonlight. Silver painted the trees. Wind curled around the mountaintops like a whisper from the past, and 1,000 former alphas stood shoulder to shoulder in a perfect circle. Quiet, watching, waiting. My heart was pounding so hard, it felt like it echoed through the ground. I stepped forward, hand resting on my belly, fingers spreading like I could shield the tiny heartbeat growing inside me with sheer will. The bump had gotten noticeable lately, nothing too big yet, but enough that Grace kept trying to sneak dried fruit into my pockets, and Nora watched every step I took like I might trip over air. Kale would have kissed this bump a dozen times by now, whispered to it. Called it pup. The ache in my chest tightened like a fist. I hadn't stopped missing him. Not for 1 second. But I had a war to win, a pack to protect, and now this. My voice rang out, steadier than I felt. You've suffered long enough? My gaze swept the circle. Hardened ex-alphas with silver in their hair and pain behind their eyes. Some had jagged scars. Some looked too young to be carrying the weight they did. But all of them had bowed to her once, the witch, and all of them had lost something in return. Now they stood here for me, for a promise. For too long she's taken what belongs to the moon, I said, lifting my chin. But tonight we take it back. Tonight we break the curse. They roared. Not just cheers but howls. Real, raw howls that shook the trees and sent birds scattering like the forest itself was trembling in anticipation. Talon stepped forward, nodding. He wore a dark leather coat that whipped behind him in the wind, and for once he looked peaceful. Maybe not healed, but close. There was history in his eyes, regret, but also strength. And a strange softness he only ever showed when we weren't arguing. He held out his hand. I didn't hesitate. I took it. He looked over at the ex-alphas gathered in front of us.
We give our power to her,
he said, his eyes flickering to me briefly.
She will defeat Tessa, and maybe we could be free from her curse too.
As the full moon rose, heavy and bright in the sky, Marcus called out.
Form the circle.
Ex-alphas moved, fast and seamless, like they'd been trained for this moment. A ring of power. Shoulder to shoulder, hand-to-hand magic humming between them like a live wire. Talon took his place beside me. Nora and Grace stood nearby, silent and fierce, like sentries. The moment our hands all touched mine, closing the final gap between two ancient alphas, I felt it. A shock, like ice water in my veins. Then heat. Then everything. The world spun. I gasped, dropping to my knees as light poured from my chest, pure silver light that danced over my skin like wildfire. My heartbeat thudded in my ears, loud, fast, unstoppable. Magic surged into me through every touch. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. My wolf clawed at the surface, restless and wild. And then I shifted. Not the way I usually did, slipping between forms like water pouring from one glass to another. This was different. Violent. Raw. Divine. Bones cracked. Muscles stretched. My back arched as I cried out, not in pain but in power. My skin peeled away into white gold fur. My eyes, Kale always said they looked like wildfire, must have burned like twin suns. When I stood up, I was no longer just Arya. I was the moon's chosen. Towering over the circle, my wolf form glowed under the full moon. I could feel them, every single alpha feeding me strength, centuries of it, binding into my bones, pulsing into my blood. The curse was breaking. I could feel the witch screaming in the distance. Tessa. She knew. Cheers echoed around me. Wolves howled. Some dropped to their knees in awe. The wind picked up, spinning like a cyclone around the circle. And for a second, time stopped. I turned slowly in place, my paws silent against the grass. My tail low, my head high. I could see things now, threads of magic, glinting like spiderwebs in moonlight. I knew where to go, where she was hiding him. Kyle. My Kale. I closed my eyes, and for the first time since he vanished, I heard him.
Find me.
His voice, in my chest, in my head, whispered, but certain. When I shifted back, the circle gasped as I collapsed forward, caught just in time by Talon, who wrapped his arms around me like a shield. My clothes were torn, my skin still glowing faintly. Sweat clung to my brow, and my breathing came in ragged bursts.
You okay?
Talon whispered, holding me tighter. I opened my eyes. I know where she is.
Where?
I looked out at the 1,000 former alphas, all of them kneeling now, waiting for my word. North Carolina, deep in the mountains of Blue Ridge. She's there. With him. Talon exhaled, the tension bleeding from his body. His fingers brushed the edge of my hair, soft and unsure.
You're not alone, Arya.
He murmured.
We ride with you.
I looked up at the stars, at the full moon, at the wind-tossed trees. My palms settled over my belly again. I know, I said, but she has something that belongs to me, and I'm not leaving that mountain without him. The forest roared, and the moon watched. The air burned like copper. I could taste the storm before I saw it, electric, sharp, wild. The clouds above the Blue Ridge had thickened like bruises blooming across the sky, smearing the sun with shades of war. Wind tugged at my cloak, whipping my hair around my face. The moon blade at my hip hummed, alive with something ancient and angry. We stood just past the tree line. The witch's fortress had risen from mud and bark like a nightmare given form, sprawling black spires and bone-white walls veined with crimson vines. Magic hung heavy, like wet wool on skin, but my belly had grown. My power, too. After a month without Kale, after nights spent screaming into pillows that smelled like him, after waking up clawing at empty sheets, he'd come back only to walk straight into hell with me. Talon was at my side, quiet, resolute. His armor bore the crest of his cursed line, now broken thanks to the ritual. The ex-alphas, over 1,000 of them, stood behind us, forming a wall of fur and flesh, steel and teeth. Then the gates groaned open, and she came out. Tessa. She looked no older than 21, but her eyes held centuries. She moved like a ghost, gliding across the blood-stained stone with Kale's chain still wrapped tight around her wrist. Her mouth twisted in a smile that made my skin crawl.
You want him?
She asked, her voice like frost cracking wood.
Come and get him.
I didn't hesitate. Not this time. I ran straight into the heart of the storm. Screams shattered the air as our armies collided. I could barely see through the blur of steel, claws, and magic. My blade lit up, glowing moonlight white as it sliced through her illusions. Talon was a beast beside me, his eyes locked on the witch as if she were the last nightmare he'd ever face. Grace and Nora fought back to back, blood streaking their arms. Marcus chanted something old, grounding the earth beneath our feet. Kale had broken free. I saw him move like lightning, punching through the guard that held him, snagging a blade from the ground and diving into the fray. The second I laid eyes on him again, my heart, my soul, screamed mine. Tessa raised her hands and screamed an incantation. Her mouth spewed darkness, ink pouring into the air. 1,000 new soldiers appeared like smoke, as if torn from hell itself. "I'm not scared of you anymore," I snarled, lunging toward her.
"You should be,"
she hissed. We fought. God, we fought. She was fast, slippery, like smoke in the wind. But I was something more now. I was a mother, a mate, a leader. My body pulsed with the strength of ex-alphas. My wolf had grown massive, ancient in power and voice. Every time she tried to cut me down with her spells, I stood taller. I swung my blade and hit her shoulder, her side draining her like a cracked dam. "You took away my parents," I growled. "My brother. You tried to take Kale. And now, you will never hurt my child." Tessa stumbled. The ground cracked beneath her. Blood pooled from her ribs, staining her pale dress. She tried to speak another spell, but nothing came out. Then, in a desperate flash of hatred, she darted toward Kale. "No," I screamed. She struck from behind. Kale's body arched in pain. A guttural cry tore from his throat. The sound it splintered me. Time slowed. Tessa fell. Dead. But Kale. I dropped my sword and ran, faster than I ever had. He collapsed to his knees, blood pouring from the side of his neck where her blade had found skin. The world blurred. Talon and Marcus held back the crowd. Grace was crying. Nora covered her mouth. I dropped to my knees in front of him. "Kale? No, baby, stay with me. Please stay." His eyes fluttered open. His breath came in stuttered gasps, broken and shallow. His fingers found mine. Bloody, shaking, warm.
Arya,
He whispered, the word barely there. "I'm here," I whispered back, pressing my forehead to his. His thumb stroked my cheek.
you're stronger than me now. You're the strongest woman I've ever known.
His hand cupped my belly next. My heart cracked clean open.
Promise me, you'll lead them. Take care of our child, be the Luna they need.
"I promise," I cried, my tears falling onto his chest. "I promise, Kale. But not like this, please don't leave me." He smiled. Weak. Beautiful. Final.
Moonlight looks good on you.
He whispered. And then he was gone. His chest stilled. The last breath slipped from his lips. I screamed so loud the sky split. Wolves howled. Talon fell to his knees. Grace and Nora sobbed. Every single soldier ex-alpha or not dropped their weapons. Silence swept over the battlefield like snowfall. I cradled Kale in my arms. His blood soaked my dress. My nails dug into the dirt beneath him. My soul shattered in that moment. Talon knelt beside me. He wrapped an arm around my shoulders, silent tears trailing down his cheek.
"We'll carry him home."
He whispered. "Gih." And we did. We carried Kale, my mate, the father of our unborn child, back to Willow Creek, back to where he belonged. The skies cried with us that night, and under the blood moon, I made a vow, not just to him, to our pack, to our child, to the love we'd built with our scars. I would rise. I would lead. And Kale would live in every step I took forward. The nights were quieter now. Too quiet, sometimes. I still reached for Kale in the dark, forgetting for a second that the bed would stay cold on his side. His scent lingered in the sheets, soft and wild, like pine needles and firewood. Some days I could breathe through it. Other days, it broke me clean in half. It had been weeks since the battle with Tessa. The ashes of her power scattered like dust across Willow Creek. The forest had started to heal just like us. I'd stepped into Kale's shoes, not because I was ready, but because I'd promised him I would. And he always believed in keeping promises. Talon stayed, surprisingly. He didn't try to run. Didn't try to hide behind the bloodline he came from. He worked the land beside us, rebuilt the northern wall with his own hands, and stood by me through council meetings, decisions, and patrols. I didn't know if he was seeking redemption or just belonging, but I let him stay. Because grief teaches you who matters, and who's worth forgiving. The baby came on a Wednesday, one of those slow, sun-drenched afternoons where the world felt soft and suspended in honey. I was folding baby clothes. Kale had picked the tiniest socks with wolves stitched on them when the pain hit, deep and sharp, stealing the breath right out of me. Grace, I called, grabbing the edge of the wooden dresser. My voice cracked. Talon. Nora. They were there within seconds, rushing into the room like a wave of warmth. Grace dropped to her knees in front of me without hesitation, her hands already steadying my legs.
It's time,
she whispered, her eyes wide but sure. Talon's face went pale as moonlight, but he helped me to the floor with the gentleness of a man who'd learned the hard way how to treat fragile things. Nora held my hand the whole time, whispering memories of Kale in my ear.
He'd be so damn proud of you, Arya,
she said. The pain roared like a storm. I screamed. Sweat clung to my skin. My body shook. But I kept going. Because I had to. And then, a cry. Loud. Fierce. Alive. I sobbed ugly, open-throated tears as Grace placed her into my arms. My daughter. Ours. She was wrapped in a thin blanket, wrinkled and pink, with Kale's nose and a furrowed little brow like she was already ready to challenge the world.
She's beautiful,
Talon murmured, crouching beside me. She's everything, I said, choking on the words. My chest ached not from the birth, but from love. The kind that roots itself so deep in your ribs you don't know where you end and it begins. And then I saw it. A faint mark on her right hip, pale, silvery, and unmistakable under the flickering candlelight. The mark of the moon goddess. Time stilled. My hands trembled as I traced the curve of it, barely breathing. She's chosen, I whispered. The baby cooed, blinking up at me with storm-gray eyes. Kale's eyes. I looked up at the full moon glowing through the window, my throat tight. Thank you, I said aloud, voice soft but full. Thank you for bringing him back to me, even if just a little. From outside, the pack must have sensed the moment. A long, low howl rose into the night sky, then another, and another until Willow Creek echoed with the sound of love, of unity, of something bigger than all of us. I held her close, letting my tears fall into her soft hair. This was the legacy Kale left behind, not war or blood, but life, family, hope. And in that moment, under the gaze of the moon, I didn't feel alone anymore. I felt found,